The 14 world-class neurologists sitting in his boardroom were baffled by his son's condition, but when the billionaire found his maid sobbing in the laundry room, the truth hit him harder than a physical blow. Elena pointed to a hidden scar on her own arm and whispered, "Your son isn't sick, Mr. Alzarani. He's grieving for a mother you told him was dead." The billionaire laughed, a cold, arrogant sound, until she produced a secret birth certificate that proved his entire life was a lie. "But damn, before continuing, please indicate in the comments which city you are assisting from." The Alzarani estate was a monument to success. Built with $150 million of imported Italian marble and smart glass, it was the private sanctuary of Omar Alzarani. At 36, Omar was the titan of tech, a man who had revolutionized logistics across the Middle East. He was sharp, cold, and lived by a singular rule: everything and everyone has a price. In the lower levels of this palace lived Elena, a 40-year-old woman from the Philippines. For 5 years, she had been the head laundress. She was a silent shadow, responsible for the $10,000 suits Omar wore and the delicate linens of his 8-year-old son, Zayn. Omar had never spoken to her. To him, she was just another line item in the household budget, an invisible ghost who made sure his world remained spotless. While Omar was busy conquering markets, his son Zayn was wasting away. For 6 months, the boy had been bedridden in a state-of-the-art medical wing built inside the mansion. He wouldn't eat, he wouldn't speak, and his muscles were atrophying. Omar had flown in specialists from the Mayo Clinic in Zurich, spent $12 million on experimental treatments, and built a private lab. The diagnosis was always the same: unknown neurological decline. On a humid Tuesday afternoon, Omar was in a foul mood. A massive deal was stalling because he couldn't find his lucky cufflinks, the ones his late wife had supposedly given him. He stormed down to the laundry room, ready to fire whoever had misplaced them. He burst through the doors, but the reprimand died in his throat. The room was filled with the hiss of steam, but Elena wasn't working. She was collapsed on a pile of white silk sheets, her face buried in her hands, shaking with jagged, heart-wrenching sobs. In her hand was a small, tattered photograph, the same photo Omar had on his own desk, but this version wasn't cropped. "What is the meaning of this?" Omar barked, his voice cold. "My wardrobe is in disarray, and you are here wasting my time with hysterics? If you can't handle the job, leave." Elena startled, scrambling to her feet, trying to hide the photo behind her back. I am sorry, sir. I will find the cufflinks. Please, I saw the news about Zayn's new treatment. It won't work." Omar stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "You? A laundress? You think you know more than the finest doctors in the world?" Elena looked him in the eye for the first time in 5 years. Her eyes weren't filled with the fear of a servant, they were filled with the fire of a mother. "The doctors are looking at his brain, Mr. Alzarani. They should be looking at his heart. He's not sick. He's starving for the truth." She threw the tattered photo onto the folding table. It was a picture of Omar's wedding day, but while Omar's version showed him and his late wife, this uncropped version showed a third person, a young Elena, holding a newborn baby, standing right next to them in a nurse's uniform. "You told him his mother died in a car accident," Elena whispered, her voice trembling. "But he saw her, Omar. 6 months ago, he saw the letters you hid. He knows she's alive and that you paid her to disappear." Omar felt the oxygen leave the room. He stared at the necklace around Elena's neck, a delicate gold chain with a teardrop emerald. It wasn't just jewelry, it was a family heirloom he had told his son was lost in the accident that killed his mother. "Where did you get that?" Omar's voice was a dangerous growl as he stepped closer, his shadow looming over the laundry table. "That belonged to my wife. Did you steal it from the safe?" "I didn't steal it, Omar," Elena said, no longer using the sir she had used for 5 years. She pulled a small, leather-bound diary from the pocket of her apron. "She gave it to me. The night you forced her into that car and sent her to the airport with a suitcase full of hush money. She didn't want the money. She wanted her son. But you told her you'd use your billions to make sure she never saw a courtroom, let alone her child. Omar lunged forward, grabbing Elena's wrist. You're a maid. You're a nobody. You were paid to clean, not to spy on my life. I had her removed because she was unstable. I did it to protect Zane. Unstable. Elena laughed, a bitter, sharp sound. She was depressed because you kept her like a prisoner in this marble cage. And you didn't protect Zane. You broke him. He didn't lose his ability to walk because of a disease. He stopped walking because he doesn't want to follow in your footsteps. She opened the diary to a specific page. It contained a hand-drawn map of the mansion, a map made in a child's crayon. It showed a path from Zane's bedroom to the basement laundry room. He's been coming down here, Omar, Elena whispered. At night, while you were at your galas and board meetings. He would sit in that corner, behind the dryers, and I would read him his mother's letters. I'm not just the maid. I'm the only person in this house who has been telling him the truth. Omar's grip on her wrist loosened. His mind raced back to the episodes Zane had. The nurses had reported the boy missing from his bed several times, but they assumed he was sleepwalking. You've been poisoning his mind against me, Omar hissed, but his voice lacked its usual power. No, Elena replied. I've been keeping him alive. But 6 months ago, you found his mother's hidden letters in the safe and burned them. He watched you do it through the crack in the door. That was the day he stopped speaking. He didn't lose his voice, he decided you didn't deserve to hear it anymore. Suddenly, the intercom on the wall buzzed with a frantic tone. It was the head nurse from the medical wing upstairs. Mr. Al-Zarani. Come quickly. Zane's heart rate is spiking, and his oxygen levels are plummeting. The doctors are preparing to intubate. Omar turned to run, but Elena grabbed his arm. Her eyes were desperate. If you go up there with those doctors and those machines, you will lose him forever. He doesn't need a ventilator, Omar. He needs to know where his mother is. And I'm the only one who has her phone number. Omar and Elena burst into the medical wing, their footsteps echoing like gunshots against the sterile marble floors. The high-pitched scream of the heart monitor was deafening, but as they rounded the corner into Zane's suite, the chaos came to a sudden, chilling halt. The head nurse stood frozen, holding an oxygen mask. The $2 million life support bed was empty. The wires, the sensors, and the foredrip that had been keeping the 8-year-old alive were scattered across the floor. Where is he? Omar roared, his voice cracking with a fear he had never felt. He was right here, sir, the nurse stammered, pointing to the open balcony doors. His vitals spiked, he sat up, something the doctors said was impossible, and he ran. He moved like he wasn't sick at all. Elena rushed to the balcony, her eyes scanning the dark, sprawling gardens of the estate. She noticed something on the railing, a small, white piece of fabric. It was a scrap from one of the silk sheets she had been washing in the basement. He's not running away, Omar, Elena said, her voice trembling. He's going to the only place he feels safe. The place where you can't reach him. The roof. Omar asked, his face turning pale. The heliport. No, Elena said, already bolting back toward the elevators. The old boathouse. The one you boarded up after his mother left. The boathouse was a rotting structure at the edge of the estate's private lake, a place Omar had declared off-limits for years. As they reached the shore, they saw a small, fragile figure standing on the very edge of the wooden pier. Zane was barefoot, dressed only in his thin hospital gown, the wind whipping around his frail frame. Zane! Omar screamed, stepping onto the creaking wood. Stay there. Don't move. I'll give you anything, the best toys, a new house, anything. The boy didn't turn around. His voice, silent for 6 months, finally broke the air. It was raspy, like dry leaves. You already gave me everything, Dad. You gave me a life built on a lie. You told me Mom was an angel in heaven, but I found her passport. I found the pictures of her crying. Zayn turned around, and the look in his eyes shattered Omar's heart. There was no anger, only a cold, hollow emptiness. You didn't kill her with a car, Dad. You killed her with your money. And now, I'm going to go find her myself. He took a step backward, his heel hovering over the dark, freezing water. Zayn, stop! Elena shouted, stepping in front of Omar. She held up the emerald necklace. Look at this, Zayn. I have it. I have the promise she made me. The boy froze. He recognized the green spark of the emerald. Elena. She's not in heaven, and she's not in a grave, Elena said, her voice soothing and motherly. She's in a small cottage in France, Zayn. She's been writing you a letter every single day for 5 years. Your father didn't burn them all. He couldn't. Because I've been intercepting them. Omar's head snapped toward his maid. You were stealing my mail. I was saving your son's life. Elena snapped back. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a burner phone. She dialed a number and put it on speaker. The phone rang twice. Then, a woman's voice, soft, trembling, and filled with a familiar grief, answered. Hello? Elena. Is he okay? Zayn gasped, his knees buckling. Mom. The sound of the mother's voice over the speakerphone was like a lightning bolt through the darkness. Zayn collapsed onto his knees on the damp wood of the pier, his hand reaching out as if he could touch the sound. Tears carved tracks through the dust and pallor of his face. Zayn? Oh my God, Zayn? Is that really you? The voice sobbed. It was a sound Omar hadn't heard in 5 years, a sound he had spent millions to bury. But the reunion was brutally interrupted. A heavy boot stepped onto the pier, making the old wood groan. Captain Miller, Omar's head of security and a former Special Forces operative, stepped out of the shadows. He wasn't looking at Zayn with concern. He was looking at the burner phone in Elena's hand with the cold eyes of a man who had a job to finish. Sir, Miller said, his voice a flat, metallic rasp directed at Omar. The protocols were clear. No contact. No exceptions. This woman has breached the Level 1 security of this estate. She is a threat to the Al-Zarani reputation. Miller reached for his holster. He wasn't going to shoot the boy, but he was going to destroy the link. He was the man Omar had paid to be a monster so that Omar could keep his hands clean. Miller, stand down. Omar shouted, but his voice sounded weak even to himself. He realized with a sickening jolt that he had created a machine he could no longer control. Miller wasn't loyal to Omar the father, he was loyal to the Al-Zarani brand, and the brand required the wife to be dead. I can't do that, sir, Miller said, stepping toward Elena. This woman is an extortionist. She's been manipulating the boy. Step aside. Elena. Hand over the device. Elena didn't move. She stepped in front of Zayn, shielding his frail body with her own. You've spent years guarding a grave that doesn't exist, Miller. You're not a soldier, you're a jailer. And I am done being afraid of you. Miller lunged forward, his hand snapping out to grab Elena's throat, but something happened that no one expected. Omar Al-Zarani, the man who hadn't raised a hand in anger in a decade, threw himself between his security chief and his maid. Omar took the blow to the shoulder, the force sending him reeling back. I said, stand down. Omar roared, the sound echoing across the lake like a crack of thunder. The contract is over, Miller. You're fired. Get off my land before I have the police arrest you for kidnapping. You want the world to know what you did. Miller sneered, unfazed. The scandal will wipe 40% off your stock price by morning. Your board will strip you of your chairmanship. You'll lose the empire for a maid and a ghost. Omar looked at Zayn, who was clutching the burner phone to his ear, whispering I love you over and over again into the receiver. Then he looked at Elena, the woman who had lived in his basement for 5 years, preserving the only scrap of truth left in his life. Let the empire burn, Omar said, his voice low and steady. I've been a king of a graveyard for too long. Miller realized the power shift was absolute. He spat on the ground, turned on his heel, and vanished into the darkness of the trees. He was a mercenary. There was no profit in a dead contract. The silence that followed was heavy. Omar walked slowly toward his son. He expected Zayn to flinch, to run, to hate him. But Zayn didn't look at his father. He handed the phone to Elena and then looked at the dark water. "She's in a place called Chamonix," Zayn said softly. "In a house with blue shutters. She told me she never stopped looking at the moon, because she knew I was looking at the same one." Omar knelt in the dirt next to his son. "Zayn, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought her being gone would make you stronger. I thought money could fix the hole I made." "Money didn't fix me, Dad," Zayn said, finally looking at Omar. "Elena's laundry did. Because every time she washed my clothes, she hid a note in the pocket. She kept me clean while you kept me lied to." Omar turned to Elena. She was standing a few feet away, her apron torn, her eyes tired. "Why didn't you just tell me? Why didn't you blackmail me for millions instead of hiding in the laundry room?" "Because if I asked for money, you would have seen me as an enemy," Elena said. "But as a maid, I was invisible. And in this house, the only way to see the truth is to be someone nobody looks at." The dawn began to break over the Al-Zarani estate, casting long, grey shadows across the lake. Omar sat on the edge of the pier, his expensive suit ruined, watching his son sleep for the first time in months. Not a medicated sleep, but a deep, peaceful exhaustion. "The board has called an emergency session for 8 a.m., Omar said, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "Miller leaked the story. The press is already at the gates. They're calling it the Kidnapper King scandal." Elena stood behind him, her hands folded. She didn't look like a laundress anymore, she looked like a judge. "Are you going to fight them, Omar? Are you going to lie again to save the shares?" "I'm stepping down," Omar whispered. "I'm giving them the chairmanship. I'm taking Zayn to France. But there's one thing I don't understand." He turned to look at her. "You've risked everything for my son. You've lived in my basement, worked for pennies, and fought off a professional mercenary. You said you didn't do it for money. So why?" Elena reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, yellowed envelope. It wasn't a letter from Zayn's mother. It was a document from 30 years ago, a land deed from a small village in the Philippines. "Your father, the great founder of Al-Zarani Logistics, didn't build his first shipping port on empty land," Elena said, her voice trembling with the weight of decades. "He built it on the graves of my family's farm. He used his lawyers to strip us of everything. My father died in poverty trying to fight the Al-Zarani name." Omar felt the final layer of his world crumble. "You came here for revenge? You came to destroy us?" "I came to see if the blood of a thief could produce anything good," Elena replied. "I spent 4 years watching you, seeing you become just as cold as your father. I was going to leak your secrets and watch your empire fall. But then, I saw Zayn. I saw a little boy being slowly killed by the same greed that killed my father." She stepped closer to Omar. "I realized that if I destroyed you, I would be destroying him too. I didn't save Zayn to hurt you, Omar. I saved him to break the cycle. To make sure that the next Al-Zarani isn't a man who hides behind marble and lies." 3 days later, the Obsidian Tower in Riyadh was in chaos, but Omar was thousands of miles away. He stood in front of a small cottage with blue shutters in the French Alps. The air was crisp, smelling of pine and fresh snow, not the artificial lavender of a laundry room. Zayn stood beside him, holding Elena's hand. They hadn't left her side. Omar had offered her a settlement of $10 million for the land his father had stolen. She had accepted it, but only on one condition, that every cent be used to build a school in her home village. The door to the cottage creaked open. A woman stepped out. She looked older than the photos, her hair streaked with grey, but when her eyes met Zayn's, the world seemed to click back into place. "Mom!" Zayn sprinted across the grass, his legs strong and sure, leaving the mystery illness behind in the dust of Saudi Arabia. Omar watched the reunion from the car. He didn't try to join them. He knew he had a long road of penance ahead before he earned a seat at that table. He looked at Elena, who was standing by the gate, watching the family she had mended. "What will you do now, Elena?" Omar asked. "I think I'm done with other people's laundry," she said with a faint, tired smile. "I'm going home to plant the seeds on my own land." As Omar watched her walk away, he realized that for 5 years, he had been the richest man in the world, yet he had been the most blind. He had looked at a maid and seen nothing, while she had looked at his soul and seen everything. The Al-Zurani Empire was smaller now, stripped of its prestige and its cold, hard chairmanship. But as Omar watched his son laugh in his mother's arms, he realized he was finally, for the first time in his life, truly wealthy. We spend our lives building walls of gold and marble to protect our secrets, never realizing that those walls are actually our prison. Omar thought he was a master of logistics, but he forgot the most important delivery of all, the truth. Never treat the people who serve you as invisible. The person cleaning your floor, washing your clothes, or driving your car sees the parts of you that you hide from the world. They see your character when the lights are off. Kindness isn't a business transaction, and the truth doesn't have a price tag. If you build your life on a lie, even $1 billion won't keep the roof from falling in. But if you have the courage to listen to the invisible voices, you might just find the key to your own freedom.